Oftentimes, when video games are reviewed, there is a stark contrast between the review scores based on where they're from. Exhibit 1, Destiny 2. The PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 versions of this game scored from critics an 85, an 87, and an 85 respectively. In the same order from users, they're only able to generate a 4.3, a 4.7, and a 5.5 being the highest. I understand that you have to take Metacritic reviews with a grain of salt, but eventually, after enough reviews come in, you start to see consistencies. Eventually, you get to see a glimpse of the big picture coming from fans and players and reviewers. But what is it about Destiny 2 that has critics raving and gamers? The game has a large following. Apparently, there's something about the Destiny formula that people love. But in all the time that I spent with Destiny 2, it eluded me. The game was mediocre. Man, it's a good thing that these agile little scouts aren't just walking into my face within melee range. Else they might be really easy to kill.
Oh, no, this way, this door over here. Oh, look, he pulled out his sword.
Oh,
he's dead.
shit. Oh, he died. He didn't make it. Had a complication. There is just no tenseness here. There is there's nothing epic about this.
Well, yeah, what are the stakes? You'll die.
I'm just walking forward, killing everything, killing 7 enemies per magazine, reloading.
Yeah, this game reminds me of Age of Ultron. It's like you got a bunch of these robots that are supposed to be imposing, but they're not. They just, they get killed so easily, and you know nobody's gonna die.
That's Fringy, my cooperative buddy for this game. I don't want to speak for him, but neither of us really had a great time playing this game.
And when I'm giving the Call of Duty story props for being surprising.
So basically, Thumos' job is like the other bosses. His job is to get shot.
I mean, what's he even doing here? Like, why isn't he proactive? Why can't there be a boss that tries to get you? You know, they wait for you to come.
Like, are your shields back up? Okay, I'm still here.
Wow, look at how much damage he took from that shot. Wow.
Alright, there we go. That was Thumos. Man, they really played him up. He fucking killed my best men. The Blood Legion would die for him. It's like, well, they just die for anything, as the case may be, is from what I was... Yeah. Spread the word. Thumos is gone for good.
Man, Thumos, that bastard.
Oh boy.
I'm glad we got him.
Man, he's so unpredictable how he sometimes floated in the air directly above his original position.
I'm sure in 10 years I'll be saying, hey, remember Thumos? What a great boss he was.
Yeah. Originally, I had about 55 minutes of me bitching and moaning about Destiny 2, but I didn't feel like it was constructive enough, so I decided to get rid of the audio, go back to the game, play a number of hours more, focus on it, run around, do things, see things, and maybe that would add something more constructive to my criticism, when really all it happened to do was cement the opinion that I already had of Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is mediocre. It doesn't do anything well. It doesn't do anything really badly. If Destiny 2 was food, it would be plain white steamed rice. If it was a drink, it would be still room temperature tap water. Throughout the entirety of my Destiny 2 experience, I couldn't help shake the fact that the game had no soul. It had no character. It had no passion. There was nothing about Destiny 2 that made me think this was a project that was made by people who cared about what they were doing. Destiny 2 gives off the vibe that it was created inside of a sterile laboratory, or it was designed by suits sitting around a boardroom. The magic of Bungie's previous titles, namely, of course, Halo, they didn't translate in this game. It's a whole new company now. and you could see that in the experience. It's grindy, it is repetitive, it is boring, and it can't hold my attention. This game isn't interesting. This game doesn't give me anything that other games, many other games, which have much smaller development teams and much, much smaller budgets, do far, far better. Very few things I can commend about Destiny 2. Very few things. I'll start off with the good, and then we'll morph into the mediocre. Even as I sit up on this chair and talk down into the microphone in front of me, I just feel so unenthusiastic about making this video. Not because I don't want to make it, but because the game itself is so... If it was a color, it would be gray. There's nothing about this game that made me feel passionate and interested, like I really wanted to tell people. If a game is good, a lot of the times you could hear it in someone's voice. When a reviewer is giving a glowing bit of praise about some mechanic or feature in a game that they enjoyed playing, they want to spread the word that this is a great experience. They want other people to have the same feelings that they did. But in Destiny 2, I find nothing in this game that really makes me want to recommend it. But I want to be fair to the game. It's not awful, it's not terrible, it's not literally Hitler, but it's not exactly praiseworthy either. This game could use a bit of the German engineering. Anyway, let's start off with the positives, because Destiny 2 does have some positives about it. Ultimately, I think they're overshadowed by other things that are more important, because I think that Destiny seems to have focused maybe on the wrong things, at least to me, but Destiny 2 does things that are good. But it's never really the things that the game is praised for. Let's take a look at where I am. You've been watching this footage in the back. I'm jumping from platform to platform on these oil rig sort of things, above this very bright and vibrant blue sea. There's massive installations nearby, biodomes. The design, in terms of how the game looks, is commendable. The game looks pretty good. From a graphical standpoint, it's quite nice. The effects in particular, which are almost obnoxious in how much they are, but they're done well. Things are flashy. When you kill enemies, they fly back, or they dissipate into the air, or they turn into some gas, or their soul comes out of their neck hole. I don't know any of the lore of this game. They don't tell you any lore about Destiny. Things incinerate when you shoot them, and the shields pop away, and your powers, they have magical flashes whenever you use them. It's a very, very style over substance game, and it, to its credit, does that bit well, but as we'll learn, the substance isn't very substantive, which is important. I think it helps the grindy nature of Destiny, because at least while you're plowing through enemies with nary a care because of how insanely easy this game is and how insanely repetitive it is, at least it captures your attention in the sense that everything I'm doing has some level of graphical fanfare to it. Not just the effects and the gunfire, but in the environments as well. There were a couple times in Destiny 2 where we stopped and we looked around at the world surrounding us, and even though the game did practically nothing to explain it, or to give us more information on it, or direct us to some place that had more information on it, at least we could say, as we passed by casually, mowing down all that dared to stand before us almost effortlessly, at least we could say to ourselves, huh, that's kinda cool, and then proceed. See, this is cool. Look at this.
I know, it's really
this
great.
Shit right here, this is cool. Like this, look at this. This is cool. Like, this is legitimately cool.
But yeah, I think this must be like the
Man,
Vex framework or something.
This
yeah.
is so fucking cool. This is cool as shit.
And
The
yet,
problem is, there's no story behind it, no explanation of it. But look how awesome as shit this looks. The scale
yeah, I mean,
of it all, the design.
this whole area is really got a lot of stuff going on.
But in all the places that I went and all the things that I saw, I really only had the presence of mind to record that in terms of admiration of the environment. It's all done fairly well. One or two places notably so, like the Pyramidion there. But again, it's not really explained any story behind it, so you don't feel a connection to it. It ultimately is just a pretty shooting gallery. It's like the last shooting gallery, but the last shooting gallery wasn't quite as interesting to look at as this one. A huge shame. I think one of the reasons I'll be a little tough on this game is because, one, it's extremely popular, and I like to rustle the jimmies. One reason I don't wear them. But another is because this was really played up by those professional video game journalists who reviewed this. I kept reading over and over about a bright, vibrant, colorful universe and a cast of very interesting characters and a greatly improved dialogue and storytelling and lore. Review after review praised this game, with high scores, citing specifically things that I found laughable and lacking. Let us begin, if this review is to have, and a review in quotations, if this video is to have any structure, we should go ahead and probably start at the campaign. That's what Fringy and I did first. It was played up so much. The campaign is such a huge improvement from the first, they said. Oh, disclaimer, I haven't played the first Destiny. The first Destiny looked like a boring chore. And I'm probably right, because if this is an improvement over the last one, and this one's a boring chore, yeesh. Fringy and I began with the campaign, touted as a much improved piece of storytelling that gave an interesting take on the world and the universe, and that it would flesh out the Destiny lore and show us just what an interesting world that we would be fighting in and exploring. Destiny 2 fails horribly in this regard, not only in the story itself, but in the characters, and in the way that it explains everything around you. Many times in these articles that I read, and I did read a lot of articles and skimmed over articles and things like that, I wanted to see what people saw in Destiny 2 that Fringy and I just didn't see, what a lot of people apparently don't see. And the story was lauded as one of the great improvements of the title. Bungie knocked it out of the park, they would say. They did such a great job. Let's take a look.
You died on a battlefield long before my time. Something special brought us together. They called it the Traveler. And when it arrived, it changed your world forever. It was a golden age. And for centuries, humanity thrived. Until it didn't. An ancient enemy pursued the Traveler across the universe. Humanity faced extinction. But the Traveler made a choice. Its sacrifice destroyed its ancient enemy and brought life to the ghosts.
I am a ghost. More importantly, I'm your ghost. And you are one of the Traveler's chosen. You are a guardian.
What the fuck was that? That was a mess. I'm no author. I'm no storyteller. I'm no screenwriter. But there's a few things that I understand about telling a story. And almost all of those things Destiny 2 fails at. If you want to have people care about the universe, you have to show them the universe. You have to explain it. You have to world build. You have to do something that makes me care about everything around me. Destiny 2 fails in an oddly spectacular fashion at making me care about really anything, even myself. Your character is voiceless. Everyone you meet is poorly written. They don't show much in the way of appreciable emotion. You don't really understand their motivations, and that's not even getting into the idea that I don't know what the Traveler is. Maybe that's supposed to be part of the mystery, but everyone seems to worship this Traveler almost like some sort of a strange space deity. I didn't play the first Destiny. I hope that there would be some sort of an explanation as to, you know, all this stuff that's being touted as an extremely interesting story in an interesting universe. I was constantly asking, what is the Traveler? Why did it come here? If it was being pursued by an evil ancient thing that could wipe out humanity, why did it lead it to us? What did the Traveler do to stop it? What is this sacrifice that the Traveler apparently made? Why didn't the Traveler stop it from almost destroying all humanity? Why are there two other races existing with humanity, these sentient robots and the Awoken? They're blue humans. I don't know anything about them because the game doesn't really explain anything about them. I was just in the dark on so many things, but the game wants us to care. The campaign revolves around us really, really caring about the Traveler, which is this big white ball that's floating above the earth. But you don't know anything about it. You don't know if it's sentient. I guess it is. You don't know what it does exactly. It gives you space magic powers, I guess. You don't care about you because you're just some voiceless husk of a character that doesn't have any personality or do anything. You just follow orders and complete missions. There are some games that just plop you down in a world, give you a gun, and say, shoot all the bad things, and if it's fun, that's fair enough. The problem is, this game isn't fun to do that, and they try to set you up in this universe that I guess they think is very finely crafted and interesting, but go through basically no effort at all to explain everything. There are no motivations present in this game, and I was desperately searching for them. But ultimately, I didn't give a shit about anything in Destiny 2. The game doesn't give you a reason to, but it really, really wants you to care. And it's very obvious in the things that characters say, and in the missions, and in the story itself. The story, by the way, is very, very simple. Aliens come to Earth, and they destroy the last city, because I guess the Traveler did a really good job at defending us the last time, but there's only one city left for humanity. Some space pirate warriors come to Earth, and they destroy the last city, and they're trying to suck out the magical space power of the Traveler called the Light. That's what lets you do fancy space things and float around, and ultimately it revives you if you die. Because in this game, you're basically immortal. You die, and you are respawned, and that's not just like a game thing that as a player playing a video game you can suspend your disbelief with. No, respawning is part of the lore. You're an invincible warrior, and every time you die, which won't be often in this game, by the way, it's shockingly, laughably easy, but every time you die in this game, you respawn, and that's part of the story. That's like an in-game, in-universe thing. But aliens, they come to Earth because they want the Traveler's power. They wrap this magic chain device around the Traveler, and they stop its light from going onto all the Guardians, which means that they can't resurrect. And this is supposed to be the high stakes that's talked about in the game, where you lose your light, right? And you might be asking yourself, wait a second, if you lose your light, then how come you're flying around and using your space magic powers and all that stuff if your light is gone? Well, the reason is because you get your light back in the first 30 minutes of the game. No one else, just you, because you're supposed to be really, really special. The game is constantly at war with its own narrative. The game is constantly fighting against its own story. It says, oh no, you've lost your light, now you're extremely vulnerable. Right after the bad guy pushes you off of a spaceship and you fall kilometers through the air and hit the earth, and then you just kind of walk it off. You see the destruction of a city that you don't care about, and you see that the place has been torn up by enemies you don't particularly fear, because, you kill everything so easily. Then you find somebody who introduces you to the original hub world of the game, which is called the farm, where all the people are, and you talk to them in between missions, and they give you things, and you turn in things, and they give you better trousers than you had before. Or maybe they give you a skin shade for your weapons or your armor, or they give you some knick-knack or doodad. But she takes you to the farm, which is your hub world, and then you go and do a quick, easy as hell mission where you find the shard of the Traveler, which is, I guess, a piece that broke off of the Traveler at some time, and you touch it, and then you get your light back, and then the rest of the game sort of just happens. But like I said, the story's constantly at war with itself. I thought the game was about, me being vulnerable and weak, and how I had to be careful because my extremely powerful, literally immortal self is no longer those things. And in the first 30 minutes, you get all your power back. Okay. And then they make a big deal about how you're the only Guardian who has these powers. And I'm wondering, well, why didn't everybody else touch the Traveler shard like I did and get their power back? Because I guess all the other Guardians that you meet in the story are just really, they're really, they're having this little mini crisis. Oh no, now I'm mortal. And it's a huge missed opportunity. Also, I didn't know that would kill me, I guess. That killed me. See, all your deaths in this game are like these weird, cheap things where you're just running around and all of a sudden, like, a tank falls on you, or you shoot an explodey thing and then it blows something else and starts a chain reaction that kills you, or you randomly run across an enemy that will one-hit kill you, and there's no indication of it. Those are 99.6% of all your deaths in Destiny 2. Not actually, like, fighting and losing, just, like, something that insta-kills you just kind of happens, and then you're like, oh, okay, well. And I know a lot of people don't care about the story of Destiny, but I keep getting told by the marketing of this game that the story is super epic, and the world is really interesting, and the characters are memorable, and literally none of that is true. That is all just a fucking bold-faced lie. This is one of the most empty, soulless worlds I have ever played in a video game, and it looks so much cooler than it really is. But while Fringy and I were playing this game and we were listening to the story when we just gave a shit about it because it's so pointless, really, we were constantly asking ourselves questions, or we were coming up with better stories than the game had. Ultimately, Destiny 2's story is a huge failure because it, one, contradicts itself all the time, or the things that you do are really contrary in nature to the things they want you to think, or they want you to care about things that they don't explain. And to wrap it all up, it is shockingly easy. As I mentioned before a few times, the game is insanely easy, the campaign especially. There were very few times we were even slowed down in the campaign. Every admittedly interesting looking place ultimately didn't matter, because it was all just a shooting gallery that takes you a moment to pass through, and then you move on to the next area. Speaking of all the deaths in this game, that's going to be loot down there that I pick up. That orb, that blue thing. Oh, that's loot. I better go get it. Oh, nope, sorry. That's an instant death zone. Because it just is. Even though because that kills you. Thanks, Bungie. That's great game design. You sure did learn everything, I guess, from all those Halo years. Luckily, deaths in this game are few, far between, and are merely an inconvenience, not only to you as the player, but remember, in this universe, you are immortal and you respawn all the time, so they're an inconvenience to the character as well. While we were playing the campaign, Fringy and I couldn't help but notice, instead of what we saw, what we didn't see. Every missed opportunity to have done so much more and to have done it far, far better. It was disappointing how we would just rattle off the top of our heads these questions. Why did they do this? What is this place we're in? Why are these enemies doing that? Namely, why should I care? Ultimately, you play through the campaign and you go to some places and you do some things and you don't care, and I don't care, and I still don't care, and most of it I don't remember because it's all just so meh. I suppose the most memorable character in this game was Cade 6, the Nathan Fillion-voiced robot. Not because he was a good character or that he really even was a character at all, except he kind of is a little... I guess he's supposed to be funny and sort of random, like he holds a chicken in one of the cutscenes, because holding chickens, that's silly, that's random, robots don't hold chickens, guys. But ultimately, all the characters are shallow and soulless, and you don't care about them, and they come across as whiny or insufferable or just cringy. A lot of the dialogue in this game is cringy, almost as if it was written with a 14-year-old in mind. Like, man, a 14-year-old would really maybe chuckle at this. But, you know, like, adults won't, because the writing's just bad. At best, the writing is passable and serves as an excuse to move to the next shooting gallery or the next planet for you to ultimately do the exact same thing that you've been doing the whole time. Just in a different place with slightly different weapons. Anyway, you beat the campaign, and then you unlock a new hub world, and then you can do strikes. Strikes are like the campaign almost exactly, just with 3 people, where you go to a place that you've already been to a lot of the times, and then you kill a boss at the end. And that's it. Those are strikes. And I know I'm being very dismissive of strikes because, well, the strikes are just literally like everything that you've been doing up to this point. Just in maybe a slightly different spot, where you just go to a place with 2 other people and you kill a boss at the end, and then you get a chest, and the chest has some goodies in it, and maybe it'll have things that are better than what you are currently using. No guarantee, though.
There we go. Alright, move. If you got any power ammo, then yeah, use not thing, just so that we can finish it. This is oh, finally, thank Christ. And that's probably the end. Oh, wow, this better be some good loot.
We did it. Wish we'd had time to think of another way.
Oh, no, not really.
We did it.
It's worse than what I have. And it's worse than what I have. Everything I got from the first raid was worse than what I already had.
Yeah. No, mine's better than what I've got. Wow.
So I'm glad that I just spent all that time to get items that are worse than what I have.
Let's see. Oh, wow, I did the best.
Because you know what I really like in video games? Especially video games about looting up and gearing your character. What I love is to play an extremely repetitive game for 23 minutes and kill a bullet spongy boss at the end that isn't difficult to be given shit that is worse than what I already have. That's what I love. I call that fantastic game design. What that is wasting my goddamn time. And ultimately, that feels like what half of Destiny content, too, is just wasting your time. At least there's like a mindless appeal to it. How you go through the game and shoot everybody and then move along. And it's very flashy and bright and vibrant. And like I said, those effects are very good. They're probably necessary for the game to not become, I guess, even more stale than it already is. But just don't waste my time. And it might be acceptable if you could choose the raids that you want, and it had a pool of loot that you could get at the end, and you could find out what kinds of things that you like, or maybe I prefer this kind of weapon, or maybe I need a certain type of this, and it would say, okay, if you beat this game, you can choose between this, this, and this, or if you beat this raid, you can get this kind of a thing. But the best that you'll do is it'll say, yeah, you might get a rare thing at the end, like a purple-colored thing, or you could get something else, but no guarantees it'll actually be better than what you have. Even if it at least put it at the same power level of what you had before and you did it, at least I could say that's some sort of an improvement. At least I've gone sideways. But that's not exactly how the game works. Raids will not guarantee you getting better loot than what you have. Maybe you'll find something better along the way that's dropped from an enemy or a mini-boss, but no guarantees. It's very randomized. But that's supposed to be this game's virtue, is the looter-shooter aspect of it. And I would be much more forgiving about the loot in this game if the loot wasn't ultimately very boring and dull, if it lacked a lot of variety, if it was uninteresting and unexciting to acquire. I would cut this game a lot more slack if the actual acquisition of the loot was much more fun, not just an extremely boring, repetitive slog that had no challenge. Because for the entirety of the 20-ish hours that I put into this game, I don't even care to check right now, it's probably around 20. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I honestly just can't be fucked to, check. But about 20 hours worth I've put into Destiny 2, and you never have to change your tactics. You never have to adopt new strategies in order to complete objectives. Or to kill all the enemies in a room. Look how easy this game is. I want you to watch this clip where I get an item, and after I get this item, and once I get this item, I know and understand that the enemies are so shockingly easy and unchallenging and effortless to destroy en masse that I don't have to wait till the battle's over. I can just go ahead and take a look at what I've got, and I can see if it's better than what I've got, and I can take my time, and when I pop back into the game, oh, okay, I guess this is a firefight. This is Destiny's firefight. Very flashy, very exciting looking, but ultimately, you could just stand in front of in the middle of a dozen enemies, and it's fine. It's whatever. Don't worry about it. Don't let me bother you, robots. The weapons in this game are almost all very uninteresting. They are very well animated. They look good. They are drawn well. Many of them appear far more interesting than they actually are. But in practicality, the weapons are pretty standard. There's assault rifles, plus burst fire weapons, submachine guns, some revolvers. But they're not very interesting. They're just kind of standard. But the gunplay itself is tight and acceptable, and the mouse aiming is easy to do, and it runs pretty well. So the actual doing of the firefights is executed well. It's just the stuff that you're actually doing isn't really exciting. And it's very, very repetitive. Notice I've been repetitive in saying the game is repetitive because it is very, very repetitive. It's the same thing over and over without any deviation. No new tactics are required. No new strategies are ever necessary, with only very few exceptions. But even these exceptions are really superficial. Sometimes you'll come across an enemy that puts up a barrier around the enemies around it. So he doesn't just boost his allies, he makes them invulnerable and invincible. So you might say, hey, that makes you prioritize a target. Yeah, that's true, but that's just because you don't have any choice. It's not like he protects the guys around him with a damage boost or a little barrier that stops some incoming damage. We're talking about he makes everyone around him invincible. So, yeah, you have to prioritize the only enemy that can be harmed in a group. Technically, that is some level of deviation, but it's so tiny and small, and it happens so rarely, sometimes you almost forget it happens at all. This, by the way, what I'm looking at, that's really cool. I wish I knew what it was. This game flashes you many, many cool-looking things without giving you a reason to care. If I'm being realistic, even though the gunplay is pretty good in this game, it is a Bungie game and they do that well, a lot of other games have really good, tight gunplay with good controls and satisfying recoil. But a lot of the weapons, they sound weak. And quite frankly, this is 2017 and I play on a PC, so a shooter game is going to have to do a lot more than give me satisfying shooting mechanics in order to really win me over. At this point, I expect it. And I get satisfying shooting mechanics out of games like Dirty Bomb, which are free to play. This multi-million-dollar AAA Bungie game, it's comparable to those. But since this good, admittedly, shooting is ultimately done with the same rifles over and over and over again against enemies that liquefy many times almost instantly without any challenge, well, what's all that really good for then? It's just the same thing over and over. I was doing the exact same thing at level 3 that I was doing at level 20, with no deviation. I think it's important to also notice before I get too ahead of myself that when the game does begin, You have the ability to choose a class, a warlock, a hunter, or a titan. I played all of them in the beta, and from the looks of it, they haven't really changed much in the full game. I played as a warlock because that sounds like it could be interesting, and I could do very amazing, wonderful things that would really affect the battlefield, and ultimately, I mean, all the classes, they just all seem to meld together. 99% of what you're doing is just shooting things with your gun. The powers that you use are very passive, and you can eventually rank up little subclasses for your character, but all of them, the 4 different ones that I have used, no, 1, 2, 3, yeah, the 4 different ones that I have unlocked so far have all been very minor in their differences. This game missed a huge opportunity to give the player a larger variety of things to do and more powers and abilities to have at his disposal. It could have made the team much more, or made the game much more team-oriented. And ultimately, Destiny 2 is a game that you play with your friends, yeah, but there's no real team mechanics in the game at all, other than, hey, we're all shooting at the same bad guys together. You can use little bitty powers, like if you stand in this circle, you'll regenerate your shields and health faster, or you could stand behind this barrier that I put up. Or watch me, guys, my class ability is that I can dodge a little bit in one direction. But ultimately, it's kind of like Call of Duty's team play, where you all just shoot at the same enemies together. It's not a game where you're providing protection, meaningful protection from one another, buffing them, boosting them, where you're assisting them or healing them, or really using synergy together, or maybe attacking things simultaneously. It just feels like a game that doesn't really benefit in the actual gameplay from having someone to play with, other than I have someone to talk to distract me from the fact this is a very boring, repetitive game. Thank God I played most of this with a buddy. I would have died of boredom. And when I went back to the game and I played it solo, there was just no difference in how I played. It was the exact same thing. I just didn't have someone else also shooting at the enemies with me. Except just the characters and other players I would find in the areas. The areas are small enough to where the players you do run into can help you, and they are not counterproductive to you, but they're just people that also shoot at the same enemies you're shooting at. The social aspect of this game is, I mean, is there one? I mean, the game touts itself as a hybrid MMO, but what's massively multiplayer about this? I mean, hell, 30,000 people are playing Arma. Is that a massively multiplayer? Well, actually, it's probably more of one because there are more people interacting with each other on the same map than Destiny 2. I thought that I was going to make a point. I made a different one instead that made Destiny 2 look worse. What do you know? See how easy it is? Kids, now it's your turn. Do it at home. Oh, I've been rambling over this cutscene. Remember how I told you that Cayde 6 was supposed to be the really interesting, funny character? Listen to this cutscene and tell me if that's the case.
Gonna stick.
Cayde? What have you...
Stop. Look. Long story, and it may look like I don't know what I'm doing, but I do. Okay? Maybe not. It doesn't matter. Killing the power source at the origin point should break the loop and get me out of the portal system. Have you got that? Say you've got it. Say something!
Fine, I'll say it. We got it, Cayde. Now, how did you...
Oh, my cotton socks! Did you not hear what I just said?
I'm guessing this is why they don't like him leaving the tower.
I'm gonna pretend I care about my ghost, and then I care about myself. I don't blame Nathan Fillion. I mean, his lines are delivered fine. He's a good actor. It's just that the storylines that they gave him are just, yeah. But that wasn't funny. That wasn't even humorous. That didn't even make me crack a smile or curl my lips. That was just, okay. This is why I don't care about you, or anyone else, or even myself, or my ghost, or the universe. Because none of it is done in a meaningful way, because the entire game is so poorly written and shown to the player. Anyway, back to what I was bitching about. Yeah, the class distinction between the three. In practice, there's really no difference. Your superpowers are different. That's like the ult that you get. You press V, and it does a lot of damage to things, and then you charge up the meter, and you do it again, and you save it for bosses so they die in seconds. No game will ever make me feel less enthusiasm than Destiny 2 when I hear the words boss fight. Bosses are all particularly very easy and uninteresting, and they are bullet spongy, and they just can't capture your attention. Alright, let's just skip to the end of this boring fight, because it's boring to watch and it was boring to do. And ultimately, that really sums up Destiny. It's just boring to do. And again, I don't want to not like the game. People accuse me of that on Twitter. By the way, a lot of people came to the defense of this game on Twitter whenever I was shitting all over it, whenever I was criticizing it. A lot of people defended this game. And they didn't really tell me why the game was good, or why it was fun, or what was supposed to be great about it. They would just say things like, if it's not for you, don't play it. Yeah, we get it. You don't like the game, stuff like that. They never actually explained to me, what was good about it. This left me reading reviews from professional video game journalists that told me that the story was great when it's one of the worst and unmemorable that I've ever played in my life. And in that fight, I think that was the fight that I got to level 20 in. Getting to max level is very, very easy. It makes me wonder why they make such a big deal about leveling up and getting through levels, and they even make you grind for levels to get through the campaign. You can't just sit down and play the campaign, right? Because that just isn't done. We have to make you grind your level even higher and higher so that you can finish the campaign. So go out there and do things, inflate your playtime, and maybe try the PvP. The PvP literally feels like just a tacked-on addition to the game. There's nothing special about it. You take your guns into an arena, most of which are very poorly designed. They look good, but they don't really flow very well. They don't have this lane sort of thing. But, yeah, PvP just feels like at the last minute, they tacked it on. They said, oh, we gotta have PvP in a game because some people like that. So, yeah, there it is. There's no real way to choose. There's no way to choose the map. There's no custom games. You just press Crucible, which is the PvP, and then it plops you into a game type. And you fight people with your guns, and you shoot them, and they die. But all the guns are different. So there's no consistency. And I didn't like the PvP. Maybe somebody else can spend more time with it and tell you better than I can. That's why I don't consider myself a reviewer. I just give you thoughts on what I've done. And my thoughts are the PvP is boring garbage. And don't give me that get good stuff. I did fine in PvP. I had like a 1.6 something KD. We just hopped in. We played some games. It wasn't fun. There wasn't any consistency. And that's strange because you have a game like Halo, right? And Halo was some of the best PvP that's ever been made. There were consistent times to kill. There were set weapons. You knew what the weapons did. They had their roles. You had power weapons, and you should control the power weapons and not waste them. And you had zones on the map that you wanted to stick around, and you wanted to know how to control those power weapon zones, and it had a structure to it. And that's one of the reasons it was great. So yeah, if you want an in-depth PvP analysis, then get it from someone else. It's just, I didn't like the PvP. It just felt like a waste of time, and I didn't like it. I didn't care for it. I can't believe that there's something even more uninteresting than Destiny PvE, which is Destiny PvP. Now, in addition to the campaign and the strikes, there are things called raids, but I didn't do a raid. I just had enough. I'd had enough of this game. And if I wanted to get to a raid, I would have to grind my light level even further, and I just didn't feel like grinding until I got better and better weapons to get to another raid. I did the Nightfall Strike, which is like a regular strike, except they changed the numbers around so that you have a timer, and the enemies are more bullet spongy and they do more damage, but we beat it on our first try, cementing the idea that I had in my head that this game is really easy. It was challenging, though, but we did beat it on the first try. So, SOCKS. But there you go. So, again, that's why I don't call myself a reviewer. I just don't have the patience for this game to get to the raid. And if the raid is the best part of the game, and maybe it is, maybe the raid is the best part of Destiny 2. If I have to get 20 hours into the game and I still have to grind even more to access it, I just can't be fucked. I just don't want to be bothered by it. I'm sorry, but that's just... It's like when people say the best part of the MMO is the end game. And many times it actually is. But If the end game is the only good thing about a game, and it takes me God knows how many hours to get there, then, I mean, why? If I play World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2, which have these big end game things, yeah, I enjoy the trip along the way. I don't have a boring chore to get through in order to get to the fun part. That's not good game design. I don't necessarily mind grinds if they're fun along the way. Vermintide is a grind, but it's a game that you can choose your difficulty, and that can influence the kind of loot that you can get, and it takes legitimate skill to play on higher difficulties where you have to crowd control and use your weapons best and, you know, use your items well and not waste them and actually act as a team and cooperate. In this game, there is no difficulty selector. Well, the only difficulty is easy, and the only mode is boring. And then they make you grind to do more stuff that's ultimately very similar to what you'd already done.
Let's head off. You
I
ready?
just want to put a grunt's face on it is what I want to do. Go. I want to finish this game, please.
Let's go. All right.
My legacy on this game will be that I should be playing Halo Clan. Is what it should be.
I really wish that I didn't have to pay for Xbox Live, because then I would hop on and play the MCC.
Yeah, it's like, why have they not put that on PC yet?
Yeah, it's
like, do they not like money?
Oh, it says it requires 240 power to play the as a guided game.
What?
Come on.
You've got to be shitting me. Did they just fucking change the rules on us when we're ready to... Listen, Bungie, I went to your stupid fucking website. I made a clan mocking this game. And I talked to the blue person, and I beat the thing, and I finally grinded to get 230 power level. And now you're telling me, oh, do it 10 more times.
Let's see. I'm going to see if I can find someone on just on Twitter to play.
Fuck. You know what? I should be playing Halo. But Rags, you might say, other games do this. Other games will make you grind. Other games will make you get to a certain level before you're allowed to play. Yes, that's true. But other games are fun to play. That's the thing. Guild Wars 2 is fun to level up and to explore and to make your character better and to see things and do things. There's immense variety in those games. There are games where, yes, there is a grind, but the grinding can have fun to it. There can be enjoyment in it because what you're actually doing has a level of variety to it. It's not just almost literally the exact same thing for 20 plus hours until you get to the good part. Maybe the raids are just fucking tits. Maybe the raids are the most amazing thing in the universe, and I'm just denying myself the orgasmic privilege of accessing them. Maybe that is the case. I am 100% willing to believe that the best thing that Destiny 2 has to offer is the massive floating pleasure palace raid that is the Leviathan. And I've looked at screenshots, and I've watched a couple little video clips and things of it, and I've read articles about it. But ultimately, I haven't played it, because I've put 20 hours into this game, most of it mindless grinding, and I just can't be fucked to keep grinding to get to the best part of a game. If you take the best part of the game, and you lock it behind a 20-hour struggle, struggle might be the wrong word to use, a 20-hour chore. And this is why I don't really call these videos reviews, because if I was making a right, proper review, then I would grind it to get to the raid, because I know they're apparently a big fucking deal. Fringy told me that he had to play for 28 hours in order to get to the point where he would get to the raid, where it was even accessible to him. And then the wait time was 40 minutes. Man, that sounds like a whole lot of fun. What a blast it must be to play the raid. And then I look at it, and ultimately it seems like it's just more of the same, which is fine if this game is your thing, but I just want to be very, very clear about the fact that everything that I know about Destiny, which is actually very little because, again, they don't really explain anything and leave more questions than they leave answers, but everything I know about this game revolves around me not having played the raid. Because, again, I'm not going to play a game for 28 hours to get to the best part. If the game was enjoyable along the way, if there was more to it, if it was less repetitive, if I was doing a larger variety of things with interesting weapons and mechanics that were constantly shifting, if I had to keep my wits about me, then I probably would play the 28 hours, and then I would play the raid. But Destiny 2 has not earned my time, and everybody sets a certain price on their time. And I would rather be playing other games than playing Destiny 2. Will I go back to Destiny 2 and try it in the future? Absolutely. Because I see the... I think I see the appeal, at least. I see the idea... Because I popped back onto the game, played it a bit more, went around, did some activities, got some engrams, which are items that you get, and then you turn into vendors, and they unlock things for you. Shaders... By the way, shaders are... They're one-time use. I believe in the first game, people tell me that you unlock a shader and you could keep using it, which sounds really good. That's a system that Guild Wars 2 has, for instance. You buy a die, or you earn a die, and you could always use it on everything. And not only that, but it seemed to be consistent across everything you applied it to. I noticed that the shaders in Destiny 2 are not consistent across different types of armor and materials. So I could use a die on maybe a helmet and my tunic, and it would match. But if I put the same on my gloves, it would be just a completely different color, like it didn't even... I don't know. That seems strange to me. And I really appreciate it when games give you a lot of power to control how cool you look. But changing shaders in this way just seems like a greedy sort of money decision, and ultimately it made me not want to use them because they were things that I couldn't just earn back or use again. They just seemed like they were too valuable to almost use. Maybe that's just my mind at work. But I kept playing Destiny 2. I got to the 20-hour mark, like I said, and ultimately, no matter where I went, all of the enemies felt almost identical. Sure, they looked different, and there were small, tiny changes in the things that they did, but these were almost like little minute details. Enemies did not behave differently. The Vex and the Fallen and the Cabal, they all attacked and behaved mostly the same. The Hive seemed to be the most interesting, and that's not saying much, just because they had enemies that would like rush you like it's a zombie game. It added a little bit of tensity. Not much, but just a little bit. The Taken, which I still don't know what they are, but they appear from the void, and they look like sparkly space monsters, but ultimately they're just a combination of all the other enemies at once. So there's nothing special about them. Even most of the bosses all behave the same. They would just be more, they'd be more bullet spongy. They would take more damage. You're watching me fight an enemy here in a public event that I fought on another planet. It's the exact same kind of enemy. There's nothing special about fighting him here on a completely new world than I did back on Earth, I think is when I fought him before. It's the same exact fight. It's just in a different place. There's no real changes. He even uses the same little abilities. The differences between the planets just seem to be nothing more than window dressing. The planet you go to is just what kind of environment you want to be around. There didn't seem to be any real environmental difference between them. Enemies are always the same on all of them. Public events seem to be the same on all of them. It's just a matter of looks and aesthetic. Ultimately, a lot of the problems in Destiny 2 fall into the problem area of its style over substance. It's just the same thing over and over, it just might have a different background to it. And while the game is functional and I experienced very little in the way of bugs, I simply was not having fun because what you were doing constantly wasn't interesting or very engaging. This is a game that I see myself very periodically visiting every once in a while and looking at, like this teleportability, right? That he lifts you to the air and you fall down. Enemies need to do more things like that. This stood out to me because it's so foreign in the Destiny 2 gameplay. It felt like it was new and unusual, and it just shook things up for just a moment, just for a tiny moment. Things seemed a little different. And it's a missed opportunity that other enemies don't do very strange or interesting things like that. However, for the rest of the boss fight, he just sits there and you shoot them. And that's all you do. There's no skill or tactics required. You just hide behind cover if your shields get low. And then your shields recharge, and then you pop back out, and then you shoot them with your guns. But, I could kind of see, sort of, I guess, what people see in this game. It's flashy, it looks good, it runs well. It sounds okay. The music, for the most part, is pretty standard. There's a couple, musical pieces that are quite good. Weapon sounds are actually, for the most part, are fairly standard and weak sounding, really. But I guess I see why people would keep coming back. Taking a character, even though ultimately your character has no personality and isn't interesting in any way, you get gear and new weapons, and you look a little different, and you can color yourself differently. You build up this character over and over, and you do all the challenges, and you try the little quests. It's all very repetitive. Nothing really stands out, but, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to do. It's all the same thing, but there's a lot of that one thing in the game to do. There's a lot of it. You see, this is the difficulty spike where you just, like, die. Things are just fine, and then all of a sudden, poof, you're dead. When I made my first original video, I was just shitting all over this game, and I didn't feel like it was very constructive. I feel like, hopefully, when I went through the game some more and added some more hours to it and focused on the game and everything inside of it, I think I've been more explanatory with my experience in Destiny 2. And I suggest you listen to other people's reviews. Maybe I am not giving this game a fair shake. I don't know, but I think after about 20 hours, I think my opinions are fairly solid. At least I'm being honest about how I feel. Maybe I got the wrong impression. Crash Spaceship looks cool. But I'm being honest about how I feel. And if I am giving this game a bad rap unfairly, that would be one thing. But I think I have been fair. And so when I see these articles from professional video game journalists and reviewers giving it 8s and 9s and higher, I get shocked. And I put this game up to a lot of scrutiny, especially because it's extremely popular, and because a lot of people swear by the experience, and because this is Bungie, and because, it's been tooting its horn so much about story and world building. But ultimately, Destiny 2 is a game that falls flat, but doesn't really falter significantly at the same time. It's an excellent, mediocre game. It's a solid experience in the terms that it works, the mechanics are tight, it functions fine, it runs well, the controls are good, but it doesn't excel in anything. Every single thing about Destiny 2, another game does better. Another cheaper, older game does better. I don't see any reason to play Destiny 2 over Borderlands 2. But maybe I'll jump back into this game with Fringy. Maybe we'll try the raid later on if we can be fucked to care enough. Maybe we can go and do some quests or see what's up, or when expansions come out. We could take a look. We could stream it. We could laugh and have a gay old time. It'll be great. Oh, wait, that's right. I'm racist. I can't play with Fringy, can I? Never mind. I guess we got this.
Looks like I just repaired the power converter or whatever.
Oh.
Just by shooting
still
it.
dark, so it's gotta be more than a piston problem. Gonna have to get in, futz with the circuit breakers.
Try the central platform. Everything routes through there.
Okay. But why are we restoring power to the station?
Oh, yeah, what are we supposed to be doing?
Well,
we have to have that signal that everyone hears. No, that was the last planet.
No.
Fuck.
In here.
Really?
Yeah, in here.
Wait. I think you're gonna...
Nope. What the...